Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Under a Conservative government, common sense change will be the approach that we take in British Columbia.
Days before BC heads to the polls, the Conservatives share a platform prioritizing affordability and safety. Plus, a Vancouver Compassion Club files a charter challenge.
Without the club, overdoses go up. Without the club, people don't have access to a reliable supply of drugs.
Saying their rights were violated when they were shut down and arrested. And as Canada-India relations come under more strain, members of the pro-Khalistan movement say they're fearful.
The RCMP and the Canadian government to make sure that these type of criminal activities are not taking place against Canadian citizens on Canadian soil.
The fallout from explosive allegations linking the Indian government to violence in Canada.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Thanks for joining us. BC Conservative Party leader John Rustad has announced his party's election platform with just 4 days left until voting day on Saturday. As Katie DeRosa reports, critics say the financial details of that plan are still murky.
When we look at British Columbia, this is no better place, I think, to unveil our platform.
On day 25 of a 28-day election campaign, BC Conservative leader John Rustad released his party's long-awaited platform in Vancouver.
Enough of a province that's run by ideology, that's run by the NDP.
It includes $2.3 billion in additional spending over 2 years, which will bring the current $9 billion deficit to more than $11 billion by 2026-27. However, that does not take into account an additional $4 billion a year in tax cuts promised by Rustad. That includes cutting the carbon tax, which would cost the government $3 billion a year, the Rustad rebate for homeowners and renters, which would cost the government $900 million in 2026, and a cut to small business taxes, which would cost an estimated $150 million a year. The NDP's Nikki Sharma criticized Rustad for waiting until the 11th hour to release a costed platform.
Finally does it 96 hours before the election is over and has no new spending on healthcare.
The Conservative platform does not include a price tag for major capital promises, including a new children's hospital in Surrey, a new SkyTrain to Surrey Newton, and a replacement for the Iron Workers Memorial Bridge and George Massey Tunnel.
It really seems like the Conservative Party threw everything in the kitchen sink into this. Everything they could possibly think of went into this platform, except how to pay for it all.
As far as fiscal responsibility goes, the grade would be an A for the BC Green Party, a C for the BC NDP, and a D for the BC Conservatives.
Rustad says a BC Conservative government would spur the economy, which would help balance the budget by their second term. The platform promises not to cut healthcare spending, despite warnings from the NDP that the Conservatives would cut billions of dollars from healthcare. The party also promises a review of government spending, and Rustad says he'll cut what he calls NDP pet projects, such as Clean BC. That program provides grants and subsidies to businesses that reduce their carbon emissions. The term climate change does not appear in the 115-page platform, although the platform does mention climate-resilient farming practices. One protester tried to disrupt Rustad's announcement, which took place on the UBC campus in the riding of Vancouver Point Grey, currently held by NDP leader David Eby.
As of today, we're going to be rising up against the bug-eating communists.
Rustad, however, was unfazed.
You gotta love it, you know. Actually, as we've gone through this campaign, we've had very little bit of protests, and it's nice to see that the NDP have finally woken up a little bit as we approach the final days of the campaign.
The Conservative platform comes as advance polls are already open, with almost 600,000 people casting their ballot. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
For more on what we're learning from the Conservative plan, I'm joined now by UBC economist Sir Somerville. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Saturday is barreling towards us. What do you make of John Rustad's platform?
It's so odd to see Conservatives essentially, planning, higher deficits than you'd see from the NDP. I just can't wrap my head around it. All I can think back to is the sort of Reagan supply side kind of, well, we'll cut taxes and then cause growth and everything will be magically better kind of world. And I think George Bush refers to that as voodoo economics. So there you go.
Okay, and the Conservative plan, as you kind of alluded to there, includes spending that will bring the provincial deficit up to $11 billion by 2027. But then it also promises to balance that budget in the second term of a Conservative government. So how realistic do you think that promise is?
Well, they seem to be banking on growing the provincial economy at 5.4%, and they claim that the NDP will grow it at 3.1%. To give you an idea, that 5.4% is, north of what TD Bank and RBC predict for any of the provincial economies, including Alberta, that has historically grown faster than we have and has faster population growth. So they're kind of basing this on sort of unprecedented numbers, and I think that goes back to if we just spend a lot of money and cut taxes, then we'll magically get all this growth with no kind of negative effects and everything will be hunky-dory, and that seems wishful.
Yeah, we've now seen all the parties' platforms side by side. So in your view, how do their economic policies compare?
It's hard to figure out some of the spending stuff because there's little bits of money sprinkled everywhere. And so I think I'll focus more on the tax cut side because that's sort of what's really striking. And I think what you're seeing there is that the NDP has a more targeted tax cut, so it comes in at a smaller hit, and the Conservatives are going, with a really large tax cut that would be delivered to sort of more people in a way that really juices the deficit. And I think that's the thing that's really striking, because after that, everyone's promising goodies for everything on the spending side. One thing that neither of them do is really costing out their capital plans. So there's bridges and tunnels for everybody, but those numbers are nowhere to be seen. This is just sort of the operational side of things.
All right, lots to consider before Saturday. Professor, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Be well.
John Rustad also faced questions today about comments made by his candidate in Surrey South. In a social media post from 7 years ago, Brent Chapman questioned whether people were actually killed in the Quebec mosque shooting and the mass killing at Sandy Hook Elementary. CBC News has not independently verified the Facebook post. Rustad called his comments offensive but has not dropped him as a candidate.
Mr. Chapman has come out with clarification in terms of his statements. He has also put in place a lawyer. So it'd be inappropriate for me to comment further. But I tell you something, it's up to the people in British Columbia to make a decision.
Chapman now says the shootings he referenced were, quote, all very real. This latest controversy comes after Chapman apologized for comments he made in 2015, where he referred to Palestinians as inbred. And tune in Saturday for our CBC News Live special, bringing you the results as they happen on election night. We're on the air from 7 o'clock Pacific on CBC television and online. You can stream us on YouTube, TikTok, cbc.ca, and the CBC News app. The founders of a BC Drug Compassion Club have filed a constitutional challenge of their arrests. Last fall, the Drug Users Liberation Front facility was raided by Vancouver police. Today, its operator spoke publicly for the first time. And as Bell Puri reports, the two say their rights and the rights of drug users were violated when the club was shut down.
The different drugs, and the meth is in green bags and the cocaine is in clear bags.
It was a bold initiative, openly selling illicit drugs from an unsanctioned facility. Its operators said they simply wanted to give users a predictable drug supply during a toxic drug crisis.
To be criminalized for that is, heartbreaking and shakes your kind of foundational sense of, right and wrong.
The Drug Users Liberation Front readily admitted it bought heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamines from the black market, sent the drugs to labs for testing, then sold them at cost. Last fall, the Compassion Club was raided by Vancouver police.
We have always warned that anyone who violates the Criminal Code or the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act should expect to face enforcement.
The founders were arrested. The club was shut down.
Cutting folks off from a predictable and regulated supply and forcing them to go back to this deregulated, disastrous market, this failure of public public policy. Folks are much more at risk.
Jeremy Callicum and Eris Nix are charged with possession for the purpose of trafficking. Now their lawyers have launched a Charter of Rights challenge.
Prohibiting the Compassion Club members from accessing this safer, predictable, known supply of drugs forces them to obtain their drugs from the unpredictable, toxic street supply.
Last year alone, BC's toxic drug crisis claimed over 2,500 lives.
You cannot recover someone if they have passed away. Someone cannot go to abstinence-based treatment if they are dead.
Without the club, more money goes to the illicit market and organized crime. Without the club, overdoses go up.
A trial for the two is scheduled for next October. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Members of the pro-Khalistan movement say safety is still a concern as police continue to investigate allegations linking the Indian government to a campaign of violence against Canadians on home soil. Michelle Morton has more.
But we do expect more. Sikhs are expecting more steps to be taken to ensure peace and tranquility in Canada.
Members with the Guru Nanak Sikh Gurdwara and the group Sikhs for Justice are calling for more safety measures. They say they want to see India's consulates shut down in Vancouver and Toronto.
If these consulates are shut down, then the political immunity gets lifted, and that gives an easier path for the RCMP and the Canadian government to make sure that these type of criminal activities are not taking place against Canadian citizens.
On Monday, the RCMP commissioner accused Indian diplomats of having a role in what he called widespread violence, including murders targeting Canadian citizens. Canada then announced it's expelling 6 Indian diplomats. India has denied the RCMP's allegations and retaliated by ordering 6 Canadian diplomats to leave the country within a week.
Agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen.
In September of last year, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that Canadian intelligence services were investigating a potential link between India's government and the killing of BC Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey. 4 Indian nationals have since been charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy.
Even at that time, what was really positive was that our economic relationship had stayed intact. So our trade was still ongoing. Actually, it increased in 2023. And so I think the impact we are going to see is that this economic relationship might now fracture.
Meanwhile, the head of the RCMP is urging people with knowledge relevant to its investigation to come forward. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Darius Maravi joins us now with the first look at the weather. So Darius, what's the vibe out there?
It's looking not too bad, Michelle. We've got some precipitation continuing in parts of the province that is not expected to taper off anytime soon. Some more moisture will continue feeding in over the next few days. Tomorrow does look a little bit drier. If we take a look at the forecast here, you can see that precipitation continuing to make its way down the coast. We will see some dry periods again. It's just really showers and flurries into tomorrow, though there is some more excitement coming later in the week. I'll mention that in a second. But again, throughout the day Wednesday, it will also clear up at times here in the Lower Mainland and really across the South Coast. But expect to see, at least a decent amount of precipitation until we get into Thursday, when the island at least looks a lot clearer. Vancouver will probably continue to see that cloud come in and out, as well as the South Island. But it's not until Friday that we start to see a little bit more excitement. So overnight Thursday into Friday, we see a little bit more. You can see here that wave of moisture coming in. It seems more and more likely that we will get an atmospheric river event as we get into Friday. At this point, it's hard to say how severe it will be, but it does seem like western parts of the island may see as much as 200 millimeters of rainfall in 72 hours, which is definitely significant, but nothing too out of the ordinary for this time of year. As for tonight here in Vancouver, expect to see mainly cloudy skies and then continue into a showery morning tomorrow with the possibility of a thunderstorm, which is unusual even for this time of year.
All right, thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
Coming up, with just 3 days to go until voting day on Saturday, why has the NDP focused so much of its energy in this election attacking the Conservatives? We'll bring you David Eby's answer when he spoke with the CBC's Stephen Quinn on the early edition. That's next. The BC election is just 4 days away, and each of the main party leaders have been invited to interviews this week on CBC's The Early Edition. Today, Stephen Quinn asked David Eby why so much of the NDP's campaign has been focused on attacking the Conservatives. Here's what he said.
You want people to vote. A vote for the NDP is a vote against John Rustad. Is that the basis of your campaign so far?
No, not at all. The pitch that I'm making is that whether it's affordability related to housing or just cost of daily life, whether it's our healthcare system, or whether it's building a strong and clean economy and strong and safe communities, that the NDP has the best plan, that we're actually turning the corner on some of these major issues. More people with family doctors, rents are finally starting to come down. And now's not the time to go to the cuts, division, conspiracy theories, and hate, frankly, of a number of the Conservative candidates.
Your campaign has been so focused on John Rustad and on that division and on those conspiracy theories and pointing out what candidates have done and said in the past and bringing that up. I mean, rather than telling people what you are going to do for them.
Yeah, I think it's a ballot question. I think it's important for people to know because you don't know all of the things that are going to happen over the 4-year course of a mandate. We didn't know that we were going into a huge global pandemic, and then we didn't know that interest rates were going to go through the roof and that we were going to face global inflation, all these things, climate emergencies, floods, forest fires. So people need to know what the values are of the people they're electing. And so if you're putting forward a candidate that thinks that vaccines cause AIDS or that calls people who are gay groomers or slurs the Muslim community and says they don't have a place at the table, how does that inform how your cabinet will make decisions when you're in government?
Again, but what you've just said has become boilerplate for you through this entire campaign. Instead of, again, you throw in these criticisms of your opponent rather than telling us what you're going to do.
Well, Stephen, I think it's important for people to know who's running. In my own constituency, a guy named Paul Ratchford, on Orange Shirt Day last year, this is the day when we recognized what happened to Indigenous kids at residential schools, posted a tweet that said he wouldn't wear an orange shirt because he wouldn't stand for the misrepresentation of Canada's history. And he went on from there. And so it is important for people in my community when they're marking a ballot to know if they're interested in reconciliation, if they believe climate change is real and an urgent issue, if they care about the diversity of this province and it being a safe place and welcoming for everyone, then the NDP is the place to mark the ballot. This is a serious election around those values questions.
And what about the people who are looking for a job that pays a decent wage, that need to make a living because they have to go rent an apartment that's costing them $2,500 for a one-bedroom apartment? I mean, there are day-to-day, just cost of living issues that are inescapable and that people are looking to government to help with.
Absolutely right. And so our concrete proposals on that are immediate support with the cost of living, with a tax cut for middle-income households, strong action on housing.
This is the $1,000 a year.
The average is $1,000 for the average household, and you don't have to own a penthouse in downtown Vancouver to benefit fully from it, like John Rustad's long wait program that kicks in 2029. It's immediate. It's for all taxpayers in the province. The first year is actually for people on disability as well.
When rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $2,500, how far does $1,000 go in a year?
Yeah, well, it makes a difference for a lot of families. And also, we need to work on affordable housing. And this is another critical issue. John Rustad's housing plan doesn't add a single new unit of affordable housing, not one. And for people who are interested in driving down the cost of housing, you have to build more rental housing. You have to control the excesses of Airbnb, people buying up whole homes and condos to turn into hotel rooms. You have to address people buying up homes and leaving them vacant through the speculation of vacancy tax. John wants to get rid of all of those things. And I know it is brutal out there for housing right now. It would be so much worse. And our proposal to build 300,000 middle-income homes across the province, that's what experts say our plan, just getting rid of the red tape around building townhomes would do. John wants to get rid of that too.
You can watch that full interview by searching for CBC Vancouver on YouTube. BC Green leader Sonia Furstenau will be on the Early Edition's guest on Thursday. BC Conservative leader John Rustad has yet to respond to our invitation for an interview. This was Burrard Inlet towards North Vancouver today with what felt like very fall weather, mostly overcast skies and temperatures in the mid-teens. Still to come, Darius will have your full BC forecast next.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi joins us now with his full BC weather forecast. Darius, we had a bit of a reprieve from the rain today, but it's my understanding that that's going to come back pretty soon.
Yes, it's definitely a fall-feeling forecast, actually tending towards more November than October with those temperatures that we're seeing, more typical really of towards the end of fall than mid-fall, which we're in right now. You can see here that we do have an atmospheric river event likely to come our way starting probably on Friday. You can see it landing there. Now, this is remains to be seen how exactly this will play out, but it seems like rather than most of these events that have happened this year that have come to hit the north and central coast, this one does seem to be steering more towards the south coast. We're still a few days out, so that could change, but that's what it seems like for now. So expect in the next few days really just some showers across much of the south coast and really all of BC, some flurries up in the northwest, but besides that, fairly calm. Thursday especially looks very clear across much of BC, some cloud coming in and out, but that's really it. Then we see that next wave of moisture come down, hit much of the coast, spread very widespread precipitation, and it seems like right now we're going to see a lot of that moisture feed in very consistently, pretty much from Friday right through Sunday morning here on the lower mainland. So expect to see a decent amount of precipitation there. If you have any outdoor activities planned this weekend, I would bring an umbrella. Our lows are also quite low, again, more typical of November than now, especially as we get into tomorrow night. You can see those lows drop a decent amount. Our freezing levels are also coming down quite a bit. Expect them to be close to 1,000 meters in some parts of the mountain ranges, the Coast Mountains and the Rockies as we get into later this week, especially Thursday, it seems like. Our highs are also a little bit below seasonal, especially in places like some Whistler and parts of the interior, but just a couple degrees below here on much of the coast. If we take a look at our conditions tomorrow, again, at risk of a thunderstorm in many spots. Afternoon thunderstorms seem likely across much of the southern and central interior. Also a chance for much of the west coast and even here in Vancouver tomorrow morning. And you can see that actually here. Tomorrow, it seems like tomorrow morning, as well as potentially returning in the evening. We have a risk of some thunderstorms, then some showers really just in the morning, returning on Thursday, probably late in the day, but possibly other times too. A little bit of blue sky there. But then, Michelle, we do see a decent amount of rain.
All right, maybe time to bring out the winter jacket. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Goose.
Thanks for joining us on CBC Vancouver News. For news anytime, check out our website. That's cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow at 5:30. Good night.